Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Best Damn Pod in the Land. I am your host and sports director, Brian Nelson, and with me I have...
The one, the only, about to hit you with a story about a ton of NCAA self-reported violations by Ohio State. Nothing too serious. Your assistant sports editor for the ages, Andy Anders.
And I'm the assistant sports director, Khalid Ashi.
And I'm the sports editor, Griffin Strom. Let's get right into it, fellas.
Let's get right into it. You know what, Griffin, you take us away. What are we talking about today?
Well, football season is over, guys, and even though we did have a Ryan Day press conference today where he addressed a couple of things, nothing too major there. It's been basketball season.
Of the angels.
Yeah, that was playing in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center today. But no. It's basketball season for Ohio State. All the focus has been on the basketball team for the most part since Ohio State lost in the Fiesta Bowl. And their response, it wasn't the best, guys. They lost 4 in a row. Since that Ohio State football loss, it's been dark days for us covering the teams here at Ohio State, and but Ohio State, they did just snap the losing streak with a Big Ten win against Nebraska that they desperately needed. Yep. It came off of kind of some surprising news where you had Dwayne Washington and Luther Muhammad, two guards that have started most of the season for Ohio State. Both of them suspended for the game in Nebraska, and Coach Holtman afterwards talking about how it was for something to do with violating team expectations or something. He said it was specific to an off the court incident, and we don't know what that incident was, but it did kind of coincide though with the Indiana game, the game before last night's game against Nebraska, wherein Dwayne Washington still got the start for the game, but he didn't play for most of the game. And he didn't take a single shot, which was very weird to see because he had taken 30 shots combined in the last two games before that. And also that game at Nebraska was Luther Muhammad's first game all season where he didn't start. So coming off of that, it was kind of like it kind of made a little bit of sense when the suspensions came down. You were like, those things were probably related, and whatever incident happened could have even happened, prior to that game or after that game. I wouldn't be surprised if all of those events weren't in some way correlated. What are your guys' takes on that?
As far as the suspensions go, Dwayne Washington has gotten a lot of criticism from Holtman recently, just in general, talking about even going back to when he said there was 5 shots that he didn't like, or
that was during the Wisconsin game,
saying that he could give more effort on the floor. All those things have always been there, and I think it kind of culminated in that loss at Indiana. You get those 2 minutes out on the floor, and then you're taken right out. Obviously, Holtman was sending a message to him, benching him, saying your effort's not there. And then this happens. I have to imagine they're related, either whether it was frustrations from Dwayne, and he was lashing out, or it was a minor rule violation of something, like he showed up late for a meeting or something, and Holtman, after all the scrutiny he's been under lately, is like, all right, you're suspended. Luther, I don't know. Possibly took a similar attitude to Dwayne. Holtman has never been one to shy away from suspending players when it's called for, or even when he first got to Ohio State, allowing players to transfer that he felt weren't good for the program. But as far as this stretch for Ohio State goes, the good news is after this terrible 4-game losing streak they went on, where they shot under 40% in every game and scored less than 60 points, you get this win against Nebraska, which Nebraska is the worst defense in the Big Ten by far. However, you get some offensive momentum going, and now you have 4 straight games against unranked teams. Penn State and Indiana are in that others receiving votes category of the rankings right now. But you get Penn State, Minnesota, Northwestern, and Indiana coming up. And I know Ohio State went to Minnesota and lost earlier in the season, but they should be favored in that game, should be heavily favored at Northwestern. If they can win that Penn State game this Saturday at noon in Penn State, I think they'll have seized some sort of momentum moving forward with the Big Ten schedule.
It's funny how once all the football reporters get back onto the basketball beat officially is when Ohio State starts winning again. It seems like when we all left Arizona, things just fell apart basketball-wise. But no, this was a great moment for this Ohio State team to be at home again, playing against, like you said, a very weak defensive team who is also lacking in size. So this is a great game for them to start building confidence. Like Chris Holman said in his press conference, that this wasn't the most ideal time to be having guys suspended when you're on a losing streak. He was like, nobody wants to hear bad news when things are already going bad, which we can all agree on. But yeah, this team, they played with a lot of confidence. This was the first time all season where all 5 starters scored in double digits. And like C.J. Walker said in his post-game press conference, the only thing that really changed, honestly, was the fact that their shot was starting to fall. Over this 4-game losing streak, they've been playing pretty sound defense, but the problems were majority on offense, where they just couldn't get anything to fall. So I think them scoring 80 points and seeing the ball drop for majority of these guys was a huge confidence booster going forward. So we'll see if they can continue it going into Penn State on Saturday. But yeah, I think this game was very needed for this team to get some confidence back, because that was lacking a lot.
And it wasn't, and it's not even just like people like Dwayne Washington and Luther Muhammad. You also saw, like you mentioned, like C.J. Walker finally had some shots fall. Mm-hmm. DJ Carton played much better. It wasn't just Caleb Wesson and Andre Wesson like boosting up the offense. That was the first time in a while where Ohio State looked like a full team who was actually cohesive on offense, passing the ball around and getting shots and making plays.
Yeah. If you took a look at some of the statistics over the 4-game losing streak, it's almost fucking it's almost everybody.
Excuse you.
Matrix Podcast.
A little sneeze.
The best damn pod in the land is no longer PG. We have moved up. We've moved up to PG-13, folks.
No, but almost
moved up to we got our 1 F-bomb allowance for a PG-13.
Way to just call it
That's
out.
only one of the semester. Only one of the semester.
You know, that's just the frustration from covering the team recently, coming to a boiling point here. But no, almost everybody on the team has been just shooting a horrible percentage in the last 4 games before this last win. Luther Muhammad specifically has been shooting 16% in the losing streak. Dwayne Washington is a shot under 29% since he came back from the 2-game absence with his rib injury.
And he's been shooting a lot.
He's shooting a lot and not hitting shots. And that's the thing. I kind of predicted this a little bit because I wrote an article earlier in this week that was talking about how some of the signs that there could be a big skid for Ohio State were kind of written early on in the season in the comments of Chris Holtman in the early season, because he's himself said, like, this hot 3-point shooting that we're having earlier on in the season, that's not going to last. And it hasn't lasted, and then they've lost games, When Dwayne Washington and Luther Muhammad, guys that were hitting threes in some of those big wins, and they're suddenly not hitting threes, I mean, you're not going to score. That's just points off the board. And if those guys are trying to shoot themselves out of a slump and you're just not hitting shots, and then if DJ Carton is also can't do anything, and EJ Liddell is going through a bad stretch as well, what are you going to do, And I've kind of talked about this too. I mean, there's 3 guys on the team that you just get what you get every time. Like, that's the Wesson brothers and Kyle Young. Yeah. I don't think anyone is looking at the losing streak and being like, those guys are a big factor. I mean, those guys, they're consistent players, and you're just going to get what you're going to get out of those guys.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then it's like, how much can you really put on the freshmen, because they are just freshmen at the end of the day. And I know DJ Carton can be a bit of an X factor for Ohio State, but at the end of the day, you can't say the losing streak, really those freshmen. So you have to look at guys like Luther Muhammad, Dwayne Washington, and CJ Walker are huge X factor pieces for Ohio State. And I think you can pretty much look and see if those guys are hitting shots and those guys are playing well, that Ohio State is going to beat teams. And if they're ice cold like they've been, they're going to lose games. And I think a lot of it comes down to that.
Yeah, I think mainly it's the guard play. Like 3 of the names you just said, C.J. Walker, Luther Muhammad, Dwayne Washington, are 3 of the 4 key guards for Ohio State, the 4th being DJ Carton. You know what you're going to get out of Kyle Young. Number 2 rebounder on the team, hustle guy, might get some of those hustle points.
Huge offensive rebounds.
Yeah, huge offensive that's like I said, hustle points.
And he had a stretch of 6 straight points for Ohio State last game.
Right, and then Caleb Wesson is obviously the best all-around player on the team probably. You talk about the defensive presence he's added and the rebounding presence that he's increased, keeping the scoring presence, and even having an outside shot now. Recorded his 9th double-double of the season.
Maybe it was his 7th.
7th double-double. That's still 7 double-doubles in a college through however many college basketball games they've played. 7 through 17 games is pretty phenomenal when you talk about a big man in college basketball. And then you have Andre, who's going to be a solid defensive presence, can knock down a 3 on occasion. He can be kind of an unpredictable factor, but overall you have a consistent play developed from the forwards when they're healthy. So it really does hinge on the guards. We've seen a lot of ups and downs from every single one of them. At the beginning of the year when Dwayne was knocking down shots and Luther was being that defensive presence we knew he could be, and he was hitting an occasional shot, and then you had DJ, who was showing flashes as a freshman. That's when Ohio State was at its peak. But now DJ, CJ, they've kind of lost control. They lost some control of the offense from that point guard position through these 4 losses. Then looked great in tandem yesterday.
Yep.
When they had to be.
Yeah.
Their first game starting together, the first game the starting backcourt was both DJ Carton and CJ Walker.
And the first game for both of them at shooting guard, right? Those guys were natural ones.
Yeah.
Dwayne and Luther are the 2s, but they were both out. So you need to develop that consistency from the guards. And I think if they can, that's when you'll see them get back to the caliber they were at the beginning of the year. And that's what Chris Holtman said, too, is that it's going to hinge on the guards.
Yeah.
Also, I just find it that this team actually needed that veteran presence, and Andre Weston was phenomenal last night. He was the reason why they got out of that cold, because they started the game off pretty slow. And
Over
against,
5,
against a very weak Nebraska team, they were just missing all kinds of shots. And then what was it, like 3 back-to-back 3-pointers that Andre hit to start the game and put him out to a 9-4 lead to get the thing rolling again. And then another factor was for the first time in a while, we've seen this team actually having fun on the basketball court again. They had a lot of energy on defense. You saw a bunch of guys with multiple blocks, especially DJ Carton even had 2 blocks last night. Kyle Young had 2 blocks. Caleb Weston had 2 blocks. So they were bringing the energy on the defensive side of the ball. And then to see CJ Walker kind of command the offense better than before and kind of force his will on both sides of the ball. But offensively, he led the team in scoring with 18 points. So it was kind of good to see this team back to having fun again, playing on both sides of the court, and guys like Andre Weston providing that leadership, which is something that they really desperately need at a moment like now.
Yeah, and I called out, I think, Andre Weston a little bit on the last podcast, saying that you want just like a little bit more out of him offensively. And I think he kind of responded, honestly, not to me saying that, obviously, but just in general with the fact that guys like Dwayne and Luther Muhammad weren't hitting shots in this streak. I mean, Andre Weston has been the guy that's kind of stepped up a little more in that stretch. In the Indiana game, and like Dockich and the crew commentating that one were highlighting Andre Weston's effort on defense the whole game and how he was paying attention to the ball and playing off-ball defense very well, team defense very well for Ohio State. And he was a guy stepping up and trying to generate some offense there in stretches where Ohio State couldn't get anything going. And then, like you just alluded to yesterday, it really was honestly, it was that spark he provided with 3 straight threes yesterday, back to back to back. That's what got Ohio State going, and then they didn't look back from there. They never relinquished the lead again. And so he really was a big part of the he's just been a bright spot for Ohio State in the last couple of games when they've really needed one, and I think they're going to need one.
We need it from him more often.
Yeah.
But also, EJ Liddell, that guy is, I think, just as much of an X factor as DJ Carton. He's a very unique type of talent for this team. I don't think there's another guy who kind of plays like him on this team, where he's able to stretch the floor out as a big, but he's also able to get down on the post and play bigger than he actually is. Last night we seen him posting up and also getting out to the three-point line and shooting threes, but he's also able to defend guys who are bigger than him, guys who are smaller than him. So he's a very unique player who's also very smart. I feel like for someone as young as he is, he plays a lot wiser on the court. So it was really good to see him perform pretty well. I'm looking forward to see if he gets more minutes consistently. I know last night they were shorthanded, so they had no choice but to play him a lot more. But I feel like he's going to be a unique talent going forward.
Yeah, for EJ Liddell, I just think he's been this season at least. I mean, he's been a bit of like a fair weather player. Like when Ohio State has a bit of a lead, like he'll get some buckets. But then when things aren't going well and it's a tight game and that pressure's on a little bit, he hasn't produced all that much. If you guys were watching the Indiana game, I think he had like 4 straight. He might have had 5 straight free throws because I think he went to the line. There was a lane violation, so he got an extra one. And then immediately after another miss, he got fouled on that same possession. So he shot 5 straight free throws and hit one of those. Yeah. And that was just kind of like a bad – it was just like a long trip at the free throw line.
A lot
for
of that
Liddell.
is, just youth that comes with being a freshman, just like the lack of experience at the collegiate level. And that's going to come with the more minutes as the season goes. I think we'll start to see Liddell and Carton mature. With Carton, like one of his main issues has been turnovers, and honestly, Ohio State as a whole has been struggling with a little bit with like turnovers. Yeah, recently, and that like with the ball handling with Ohio State and their point guards is an issue that still needs to be resolved going forward. Because that's the main thing that's going to lead to their consistency in establishing a flow on the offense.
Speaking about turnovers, though, Chris Holman even said this, and I was saying this while I was watching the game last night, was C.J. Walker. Like, there's just times where you could just look at him and you think, oh, he's just that veteran presence in the backcourt. But then there's times where he just makes dumb passes, and it just leads to stupid turnovers.
and dribbled the ball out of his foot when he was trying to run the clock out yesterday.
It's just like, what are you doing? You're too grown for that. But he played well for majority of the game, but turnovers is an area that he needs to improve in. But for someone like DJ Carton, I know we keep praising him as a freshman, but last night for the first time in a while, like it looked like he was playing with a certain level of control.
That's exactly what Holtman said.
Yeah, it wasn't like it didn't seem like he was a freshman anymore on the court last night. So that's something that this team would greatly need of a guy who with that kind of talent is to play more control and mature.
I think he'll hit another rough patch. The question is, how long will the next one last?
Right.
Yeah.
Is it going to be a game or two, or is it going to stretch? And they can't really afford for it to stretch from him again.
Yeah, a bit of an issue for the team in general, I think, is that C.J. Walker and DJ Carton are both they both are kind of like a scoring combo guard. Mm-hmm. And C.J. Walker's not like a great scorer or anything, but he forces his offense so much. And I just think they're not neither of them are like supernatural like offense running pure point guards, and a lot of the time you'll see like Andre Wesson or even Caleb Wesson as the guys that seem like they have a more natural knack for distributing or getting somebody an assist. But I think one of the ways that lack of just natural facilitation of the offense kind of rears its head is that they have a hard time, and they have so many turnovers trying to get Caleb Wesson the ball in the post. And it's like sometimes it's crazy, like especially Alonzo Gaffney when he plays. But like there was one last night. There might have been more than that, but there was specifically one yesterday where they were trying to get it into Caleb Wesson. It was just a bad turnover.
It wasn't even just like any single player, but just last night there were so many times where they were trying to force the ball into the paint, into Caleb Wesson or Kyle Young or just whoever was down in the post, and it would either like just be an instant turnover or it would like go out of bounds, and it was just kind of like it was just bonehead plays where it's like, why are you forcing it when it's not there,
Especially against a defensive team that's not good like Nebraska's. Like stuff like that should not be happening if you're a team of Ohio State's caliber.
Yeah, sometimes I'd look on the sidelines and just look at Chris Holman, and it seemed like there was times where he was pleased, but when he wasn't pleased, bro, it was just like beyond frustration with just they should have dominated Nebraska last night. I mean, granted, at this point, Ohio State's probably just happy to just get a win any way they can. But if you watched the game last night, they should have won by 20+ last night. But there was just certain bonehead plays that they gave up so many different possessions away. But no, C.J. Walker, I feel like one of his flaws offensively is it's not that he's not a good scorer, but I feel like his shot selection is kind of an issue. He likes to drive in a lot, and it's like that's not his game at all.
Which is so small, I feel like.
Yeah, and it's like
not like the most athletic guy.
Exactly. Like DJ Carton gets to the rim at will, but he's a great finisher at the rim. And I feel like CJ Walker, he sees the lane, and whether it's there or not, he's gonna take the shot. And
Yeah.
A lot of times it doesn't go in. So I feel like he needs to.
Can we talk about forced mid-range jumpers on this team? There's so many.
Yeah.
CJ and Luther are the two main culprits,
Yeah.
I think. You talk about guys. I mean, this new age of basketball that we've been in for probably about a decade now, really since Steph Curry. I mean, if you want to talk NBA game down, Steph Curry revolutionized this whole thing. But the mid-range jumper is the least valuable
Or
shot.
Jimmer for that.
Yeah, they're right. College game. The mid-range jumper is the least valuable shot in college basketball because you don't get the extra point like you do from three, and you don't have the high percentage that you get from an inside two. I mean, this isn't the 80s and 90s when the mid-range was such an important part of the game.
It's a good shot if you can make it consistently.
If you can make it consistently, if it's a viable part.
If you're Carmelo Anthony and that's your bread and butter right there, then yeah. But for most guys, not.
What Luther and CJ have been doing for mid-range in these games with their offense has been pretty spotty. And, like, Luther has that, I swear, he takes at least 2 elbow jumpers a game that, like, rim out to the left.
Yeah.
It's like the same shot that he almost never hits. And he's been doing it for both years he's been here. I said before the year that if that shot could start falling, then he'd actually start producing on offense for this team, but it hasn't. And I think if you don't have that mid-range pull-up game down packed to where you can hit it more than half the time, you really need to be working for a better shot.
Yeah. You guys remember early in the season when I was talking about the whole shot clock in college basketball and how in college I feel like there's just too many passes and shots being chucked up really late into the shot clock. I feel like Ohio State suffers from this, but not to the full extent. I feel like their issue is that they have a lot of ball movement, which is a good thing, but they settle for dumb shots. Like their shot selection at times is very questionable. So I like the passing that they're doing, but I feel like they need to give it to the high hand and get the ball into the post more efficiently, because at times it's like they pass the ball a lot, but then you force a pass into the post and it becomes a turnover. And it's just like, it's just not smart basketball.
Well, here's what I'd say off that is ball movement's ball movement, but it needs to have a direction.
Exactly.
Yeah. You can't,
it seems like it's
like
going nowhere.
sometimes when they actually they're working towards something, whether it's a post feed to Caleb or someone that can shoot a three is getting an open three, the ball movement worked. And I think we saw that earlier in the year when they were creating an open shot and knocking it down. Now it's just a lot of directionless passing. Let's throw it around the perimeter a little bit and then force a post entry.
Yeah.
And it exactly, yeah.
Or just force a drive that has 2 guys in front of your face and now you're chucking up a floater that's going
right.
nowhere.
It's just we're going to pass the ball around and then eventually we're just going to do something.
Yeah.
That's an area, though, I feel like C.J. Walker needs to make an emphasis, because I feel like the ball movement is somewhere where he can control the game better, because that's kind of, I feel like what he could do best is control the movement of the offense, control the plays that are being called and forcing how they execute it. But I feel like that's just an area where he doesn't take control when he could.
There's really not a guy that like can penetrate and then like create an open shot for another guy. Like,
DJ's done that a little bit.
A little bit,
but you could
it's
tell
not
like
consistent.
he's holding back.
It's going to be a part of his game in the future, but I don't think it's there now.
I don't feel like he has the coach's confidence to allow him to kind of
I wouldn't
make
say Holtman likes Carton a lot.
Right, but I feel like there's so many times during the game where you can see him getting those ISO moves or forcing into the paint, but then he forces a pass out because he knows coach is watching and ball.
I don't think it's that. I think it's his confidence.
Yeah, and when it is a turnover, first thing you could look at is to the bench, and he's coming right out the game. Like
I know
last night,
Holtman's a real team coach, right?
Yeah.
And that whole ball movement thing. I see what your point is, but I really think it's just his personal confidence. I think Holtman would tell him to take that shot. And that's what Holtman said after the game, too, is that he has been dwelling so much on his mistakes. He missed some. If you remember when this cold stretch started, he missed some of those like bunnies, some of those finishes that maybe he got earlier in the year or that he was used to getting in high school, and I think it kind of scared him a little bit. He started to shy away from it. And some of the mistakes he's been making have just been from him being indecisive.
Mm-hmm.
And he just needs to understand, and this is what Holtman said, that he's going to make mistakes. But if you let the game flow through you and play confident, then they're not going to pile up.
Yeah, it's all about establishing a rhythm. You know, you're not always going to make the shot, but so long as you get back up, and it's only as you find a way to finish or create something, and at least Ohio State's offense in general, not just DJ Carton, is going to be solid. Like, think back to like the Wisconsin game where like Andre Wesson and people and like Dwayne Washington, they come out of the second half, they're down, and they sink those threes, and you start to think maybe this team will start to come back, and then it's like they missed the shot or they started fouling and they started turning the ball over, and it just all fell out of rhythm again. Like that was a game. That was like a 5-minute stretch where they just like fouled, turned the ball over, or missed a shot. Like they didn't get any points, and that was it's not like Wisconsin was doing much either. It's just Ohio State handed them the game at that point.
I got a question for you guys though. Justin Arns. I haven't really watched too much of him to know why he doesn't get more playing that time than he gets currently.
I can tell you why.
Okay, good, because I want to know, because I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like his playing style where he could be a reliable shooter from D, and he's not really a liability on the defensive end. I feel like that's something this team could really use, is a reliable 3-point specialist outside getting shot up. But I don't know, Griffin, can you just tell me why?
Well, that would be the case if he came in and usually hit a 3, but before yesterday he'd been shooting 18% from 3 in his last 8 games.
Really?
Yeah. So they have him come in, and honestly, some of it is like,
so it's self-inflicted.
you need to have a guy, or you need to let a guy like get a little bit of a rhythm when they come in. But a lot of his minutes are like he'll come in for like 2 minutes, take a 3 or 2, and then get yanked and not play again. So I mean, it is hard
so you can't really blame him, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, if it is your role to like come in and hit a 3 and you never hit that 3, then it's like it's hard to justify.
He's not going to be John Diebler.
No.
But yesterday he had to get time because they literally had no other wings to play. So he got like, I want to say 14 minutes or something.
13.
And he did. He hit
Shot 2 for 3.
Yeah, he hit 2 shots, and the one right at the buzzer beater at halftime. It looked like a 3 at first, but they reviewed it and it was a 2. But he hit that 3 before, then he hit that one. I was like, wow, like he actually knocked down a couple of shots.
I was watching the game and I was like, wait, isn't this the guy last year who had one of those breakout games where we thought, oh, yeah, he's going to be a force on this team, or not a force, but a nice role player on this team, but he has not gotten any minutes at all this season. So when I saw that performance last night, I was like, remind me why he's not playing again, because I don't know, I feel like he could be a good shooter for this team. That's kind of what they need.
No, it is definitely what they need, especially with those guys with Washington and Muhammad.
Not guys like, okay, no offense, but like Washington's a good shooter, but he shoots too much in a way, you know?
Arons, if Arons was consistent, he's like the perfect person who will like come in. He won't take too many shots, but when you go to him, odds are you're going to get at least some points. And if it's a 3-pointer, then that's perfect. But unfortunately, his consistency is just not there, and that almost goes to the rest of the team too, except for like Caleb Wesson and Andre Wesson and Kyle Young.
It really depends on how long that suspension. I can't imagine that the suspension was going to be that much longer.
He said there's a possibility that they'll be back Saturday. So
he said it's.
I'm assuming they'll. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, if they look pretty good with them out, I'll be honest.
I know,
with you,
but
yeah.
I don't think Penn State's a team you can afford to go shorthanded into. You know,
it's
going to
be
an away game, so.
I mean, yeah, like Ohio State dominated Penn State when they played them earlier this season, but it's away, and I think Penn State's still a team you cannot overlook.
Even though they
at all.
dominated them in the first time, it was when they were almost at their peak. Of
it
hotness.
was like when they were sinking everything, and that's not the case anymore. So
and Dwayne Washington and Luther Muhammad were a big reason why. So
yeah. And I was just about to say before Brian said that I think this game is going to be like a big measuring stick to see like, okay, we saw what Ohio State did against Penn State the first time. They put up like 106, and everybody was sinking threes. And it's going to be an interesting, because this is the first team they've played twice this season. Mm-hmm. It's just going to be interesting to see how it goes the second time.
Yeah.
And I mean, oftentimes in college basketball, and specifically in the Big Ten, the second game will have a drastically different outcome, you know, when teams play again. Mm-hmm. But I am curious to see how different this game seems due to the trajectory Ohio State's been on as of late.
Yeah.
No, I want to see Caleb Wesson get the ball more in the post, and I want it to be more efficiently. I want to see more smart passes and more plays directed where they're not just passing the ball around the perimeter and then just randomly trying to throw it over somebody's head into the paint to get Caleb the ball. But no, I want to see him be more assertive and probably score 20 plus.
I mean, he scored 28 against Penn State, made 4 of 6 from 3-point.
Yeah.
And then Luther Muhammad and Dwayne Washington also made 4 3-pointers each They made 14 3-pointers that game.
That's why I don't see them.
Like that's why they aren't going to put up 100 again unless they have that type of performance. And even then, they were 30 of 37 from the free throw point line,
Right.
which I mean that's has not been consistent lately either.
Yeah.
So
it's just such a strange kind of issue Ohio State has, because it's like they need to get Caleb Wesson. I always think like they need to continue giving Caleb Wesson the ball because he draws a lot of fouls.
Mm-hmm.
He's like the best passer on the team. Him and his brother are the best passers on the team, I would say.
Hands up.
Um,
And the smartest players on the team.
yeah, it's just the issue is the team just always turns the ball over when they try to get him the ball. So it's like you can say like don't force it in there, but it's like they really need to get him the ball there. It's just they have a hard time doing that sometimes. And then the way the officiating is, like he ends up getting a lot of offensive fouls and stuff like that too. But I still feel like you just need to keep on giving him the ball. Even late in the games, they struggle with that too, getting him the ball down low late in the games because, the refs aren't going to call quite as much. So there's going to be more banging around down there and harder to get him the ball and whatnot. But it's like you need to just keep giving them, because it's like it's the same thing. Like you rarely see him like dominate a game, and I feel like he's very capable of doing that.
absolutely.
But it's like he just needs more. He needs to have like a 20
He
shot
needs that
game
point
or
guard who
something.
can
Like
efficiently give him the ball in the paint.
Like Caleb Wesson's the guy who should be taking 20 shots a game, not Dwayne Washington.
right. And you never see that happen. Like even last game, like he was very quiet for almost the entire game. He got some like garbage points at the end. He hit a 3 and whatnot. He had that putback dunk too. But like most of the first half, like it didn't even seem like they were trying to get him looks and stuff. It's like, and if he's on, they just need to keep feeding him until it's not working anymore.
Yeah.
Because they'll have games where he comes in and hits a few shots, and then like they don't go back to him for a while. It's like just keep giving it to him down low, and just because good things are happening when you get him the ball there.
I also feel like they need to get Kyle Young the ball a little bit more in the post as well, because I just feel like in the post he's very smart with his decision making. Mm-hmm. Either he's gonna post up and get a good shot, or he's a really smart passer and knows when to pass it on, who to pass it out to. So I feel like getting him the ball more in the post could also help his team as well.
Yeah, because Kyle Young has got to be shooting like 68% from the field or something like that.
He's like one of, I think him and Andre Wesson are the two players on this team who take the smartest shots.
Yeah.
He's shooting 63%.
Yeah, which is great.
Really good.
He gets and honestly, like when he makes a move in a game, like if he gets the ball and like, like a mid-post look where he puts up a jump hook or something like on a move, he's looked pretty good, honestly, at that this year. He doesn't get a lot of looks that way.
Exactly.
Which is what I think you're talking about. Yeah. But he typically makes those. But I think the team is definitely happy to have him back. And even last game, he still looked at times when they're running up and down the floor like he needed to catch a second wind because of the appendectomy and whatnot. But I think the team is definitely happy to have a guy that does the things that he does back. Because, I mean, E.J. Liddell, like, just did not rebound in Kyle Young's absence when he came in. And a big thing with Kyle Young is getting those hustle rebounds, keeping possessions alive and stuff like that.
Kyle Young does all the little things that every team always needs someone doing, and Kyle Young's the guy for Ohio State. And that's one of the main reasons why they've been playing so bad, because without Kyle Young, it's almost like their offense became stagnant.
Nobody's willing to do the dirty work.
Yeah, like their offense almost became predictable because they didn't have that shock factor that Kyle Young will bring both on offense and on defense too, just getting rebounds and making plays, out hustling other people,
I feel like a guy like Luther Muhammad, who like just isn't like a great scorer. Yeah. Like at least we've seen with Dwayne Washington, he has the capability of like putting up a big game, He's
a streaky guy. Yeah.
But Luther Muhammad, like he should be more of a hustle, like a glue guy than he is, I feel like, because
especially
he's not providing anything on offense really. And he's good on defense.
Yeah.
But like he needs to be providing something else to
even
the team,
even on defense. I was watching what game was it? It was I forget. It was one of their games on TV I was watching, and there was a play that they kept highlighting where Luther Muhammad would be in a perfect, beautiful stance on defense, and then the player would just literally blow by him. And it's like, okay, a beautiful stance is nice and all, but you need to be effective. So I don't know. I just feel like I expected a lot more from Luther Muhammad so far throughout the season, and I'm still waiting for him to assert himself because he's been one of the most. Him and Caleb Wesson have been two of the most consistent players who are consistently in the starting lineup.
Right.
But one of those two guys is consistently producing while the other one is kind of wishy-washy. So I expect a lot more from Luther.
It'll be very interesting to see how those guys respond to the suspension.
Hopefully
their
it's not by
performance is
more
gonna be-
shots by Dwayne Washington.
I think they're gonna, whenever they come back, they're gonna come out aggressive. I think they're gonna come out like they have something to prove, like they deserve to be in this lineup, and hopefully that means they'll make shots. But what I want to see from them is both just try to create plays, not for themselves but for other people, and just just really try and cultivate that rhythm and that identity offensively that Ohio State needs.
You know what I just thought about? I know we keep talking about how this team needs to get the ball into the paint a lot more with Caleb Wesson. But at the same time that I say that, I also like when Caleb Wesson is out at the three-point line. Because I feel like, one, he's one of the smarter passers on the team. So the ball movement from the three-point line with Caleb Wesson is there. But also it allows the guards like DJ Carton and Luther Muhammad and whatnot able to drive into the paint without a big body presence defending them or meeting them at the rim. So, I don't know. I want to see a lot more smarter play calls.
Ball just needs to be in his hands more in general.
Yeah. Ohio State just needs to be more unpredictable with how they structure their offense, I think. Yeah. Right now, it's very predictable where they'll try and feed Caleb Wesson in the post and fail, usually.
Just need better players. I mean, players who have better decision-making with the ball in their hands. So I'd like to see, the Wesson brothers, Andre and Caleb, have the ball more and control more of how the offense flows. As weird as that sounds, because they're not guards to where they can really control the tempo of the offense. But when you're in that half-court offense, yes, I want to see the smarter players control the ball and control the direction of where the play is going. Whether if that's Caleb in the post or Caleb out at the three-point line, I'd like to see the ball in his hands more.
Yeah. So kind of going off of all of that, though, Ohio State got the win against Nebraska. Do we see them continuing to improve and finding consistency as the season goes on, or do we think they're going to continue to be inconsistent and slide? Kind of like we were talking about DJ Carton. He's probably going to have another stretch where he isn't, on.
Yeah.
Is that going to be the case for Ohio State, or do you think this is it?
The thing with that question, though, I feel like it's really hard to say because you played a team like Nebraska at home, and you didn't have two starters due to suspension. So I really feel like it all depends on Luther Muhammad and Dwayne Washington coming back and seeing how they play and how this team plays as a unit again. I can't really tell much from last night's game, to be honest with you. So who knows? Those two guys can go back and they can go back to their sloppy play as of late, where they can come back with a new mindset where they're able to go back to their earlier season ways.
Yeah, I would. It's a Big Ten. Like they're not gonna rattle off like 10 straight wins or something. So I think they're gonna take some lumps and they're gonna win some games. I think, like I wrote earlier this week, like I just think that the team is closer to just last year's team in general than some people thought. And I think that their eventual record is kind of gonna reflect that. Better than last year, but at the same time, they still have trouble hitting a three. They still don't get out and run in transition very much. They're still a good defensive team, and they still rely heavily on Caleb Wesson. And that's just the identity of this team, I think, honestly.
What's funny about last year's team? I feel like one player who would have helped this team a lot if he had eligibility left is C.J. Jackson. I feel like if you put C.J. Jackson on this year's team, I feel like he's the perfect guard, like veteran guard presence for this type of team because he's able to shoot, but he's very smart with decision making, and he's able to get to the rim. I don't know. I feel like that's kind of what they need right now because you have a lot of guys at the guard position who haven't played before because you had guys like C.J. Walker who redshirted last season. Then you have DJ Carton playing heavy minutes at the backcourt, and he's a freshman. So Luther Muhammad is really the only guy who had a lot of playing time. Did Dwayne Washington play a lot last year, or he just played some?
He played
some, but yeah, those two guys aren't really consistent. So I feel like, I don't know, that's just a random thing that I just
feel like C.J. Jackson would just render C.J. Walker just useless. Like he just like wouldn't play very much.
Who's C.J. Walker?
Yeah, if C.J. Jackson was still around.
I don't think that's an issue, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No
Consistent guard.
offense, but like I don't know.
The battle of the CJs and never was.
Yeah. Well, I think it'll all come down to the guard play for this team. I said it
Yeah.
before. I haven't talked in a while, but
Oh, good.
Who is this again?
yeah, who dis? New pod. Who dis?
He's one of many Anders.
No.
No. One
So,
all.
one and only, yeah. Do we want to do score predictions briefly before we're over?
I have no idea.
Yeah,
what to-
college basketball, it's just like it's too impossible to even begin to predict like one.
I'll say if Luther Muhammad and Dwayne Washington come back, I can see this team winning again. But
Oh.
if Ohio State's going into Penn State shorthanded again, then yeah, I don't know. I feel like this
Yeah.
might be
Well, maybe-
a tougher one.
Maybe not just general score predictions, but maybe just do we think Ohio State will beat Penn State? Like, that's a more easier question to answer.
It's still tough because
It's tough, but at
I
least
feel like
I
it's
don't
going to
know.
be a close game.
I think it's going to be a close game, too.
I think Ohio State scores at least 60 points, though.
60. So because then they scored 106 the first time.
Well, yeah, but the last 4 games before yesterday, they couldn't even score 60.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. Yeah. Isn't it crazy? No, I don't know. Never mind.
I could see them scoring 60. I don't know if I see them scoring 70, but I could see 60. If they...
I don't know. I feel like they're out of that. I feel like everyone goes into their slump, and I feel like Ohio State had their slump and suffered the consequences of being in that slump. But a game like last night is exactly what this team needed, which was to see their shot drop in game.
Right.
So I feel like maybe that will be a confidence booster. So going into Penn State, if they keep that same rhythm, I can easily see them scoring 80 again. But we will see.
Teams just
Yeah.
have not done well whatsoever on the road in the
Right,
Big Ten
yeah.
this
Yep.
year, so that's
Well,
another big
that's
factor.
fact.
Well, one thing to keep in mind, too, is that Penn State has not been playing well recently either. You know, they've lost 2 in a row. They lost to Rutgers. They lost to Wisconsin, and that loss was 58-49. They didn't even score
Wow.
50 points, and that was at home.
Isn't Penn
That
State
was probably a fun one.
isn't
Yeah.
Penn State a bigger team? Or not?
Oh, dude, I need to look back into the.
Penn State was ranked earlier this season. I don't think Wisconsin's been ranked this season.
No,
No,
somewhat like size-wise.
Oh, size-wise. Oh, sorry.
I'd have to look at the rosters.
Pretty sure
I
they-
don't-
they
I
have-
wouldn't know if it's
I don't
on
know if
the
they
head.
have taller guys, but I know they have bigger guys. That's one thing I do remember. Is just
I really think it's perimeter play that affects this team more than anything. And really, have they really had that much struggle with size? I mean, think about it. Kentucky.
Maryland's size bothered Caleb Wesson.
Yeah.
Jalen Smith.
It did.
And,
I
Cole
think that's the
Merrill.
only example, though.
Let's
And
be real though. When we look at Ohio State's
he was
team,
without Kyle Young that
When
game.
we look at Ohio State's team, who really has size besides Caleb Wesson?
Kyle.
God, I don't know. I don't think he's that.
He plays bigger than he
Yeah,
is, and he's
yeah.
not exactly small. So
And your backup power forward is 6'6", so that's why that's why I was saying like
Least
they're
thick.
basically the same team as last year. Like they still don't have like depth down low really either.
I just
You know what they need to
really Maryland's been the only one that gave him size.
No,
I mean,
I know that hasn't been like a huge issue. It's just when you look at the team, you're like it seems like every team has more big guys than Ohio State.
You know who they need to play more? Ibrahim Diallo or whatever his name
Just
is.
get him some
7-footer.
Yeah. All right. That's
All
it.
right.
Get
Oh,
that
well.
boy.
I think we can end on that. Thank you very much for watching another episode of the Best Damn Pod in the Land. Stay tuned for more coverage next week as we recap how Ohio State does against Penn State and preview the game against Minnesota. Thanks very much for watching. Peace.
See you guys.